Hello, everyone, and welcome. Just going to give it a moment while folks trickle in. Hi, all. Thanks for joining us. We're going to give it one more minute before we start. Right. In the interest of time, I think we're going to get moving. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Strengthening Childcare Homes and Spaces for Emergencies. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over a few housekeeping items. Today's session is being recorded. We'll share the recording and materials with you afterwards. Your microphones and cameras are off for the duration of the webinar, but please feel free to submit questions at any time using the Q&A panel. We'll address as many as we can live while the panelists are talking, and we'll hold a little bit of time for Q&A at the end. If you're experiencing any technical issues, try exiting and rejoining the session or use the chat to get in touch with us. So let's get started. Regina, if you could flip to the next slide for me. Many of you joined us earlier this month for the release of the Provider Preparedness Toolkit, a resource designed to help providers prepare for natural disasters and severe weather events, which was developed by Homegrown and Local Initiative Support Corporation, or LISC, and our National Child Care team. I'm Bevan Parker Churkes. I'm the National Program Director of the Child Care and Early Learning team at LISC. I'm pleased to be joined by many of my colleagues today. John Moon, our Senior Vice President of Sustainability. Megan Ressler on my team. She's our Senior Program Officer of Child Care and Early Learning. And Nicole Barcliffe, our Senior Policy Director. Next slide, please. And some of our external partners. We have Sean Harmon, Manager of Childcare Business Empowerment at Collaborative for Children. Maggie Lee O'Neill, Policy and Research Consultant who wrote the bulk of our technical resource. And our friend Natalie Renew, the Executive Director over at Homegrown. Next slide, please. So this is our agenda for today. We're really using the Provider Preparedness Toolkit as a resource and a foundation to have built this session specifically for intermediaries and technical assistance providers who support childcare programs and want to strengthen safety, resilience, and continuity in their communities. The resource framework focuses on the nuance experienced by home-based and small-scale providers during times of emergencies and disasters, and also gives us a moment to shift from response to planning and preparedness. These are complex systems to navigate in the best of times, and we encourage organizations to deploy preparedness planning assistance in order to establish the appropriate resource connections and clear communications with provider communities to ensure access to the support they need. You all serve as critical partners in building resilient systems, and we hope this webinar offers some insights into the roles you can play locally. Next slide, please. First, I'm just going to take a minute and focus on a subset of intermediary types, community development financial institutions, or CDFIs. CDFIs are private, mission-driven financial institutions that provide responsible and affordable financing to help under-resourced communities achieve economic growth. CDFIs like LISC are committed to the communities they serve and help finance community business, nonprofit organizations, commercial real estate transactions, and affordable housing development. Next slide, please. So how does childcare fit into all of that? Accessible childcare is foundational for healthy communities and economic growth. Local community development partners recognize the importance of community-led solutions to build healthier, more resilient communities. How do CDFIs function within the childcare context explicitly? We're lending institutions with a community bend, so we focus on those facilities, infrastructure, and community assets, of which childcare is one. CDFIs may broadly touch on childcare through small business lending, economic development, or economic prosperity efforts. And then there's a subset that show up more explicitly with childcare programming. Mostly that's tends to be a focus on childcare supply building, guided by community and resident need, facility, finance, design, and development, organizational capacity building, or serving as that financial intermediary to deploy capital and resources. Next slide, please. CDFIs play integral roles in building public and private partnerships to drive solutions. At LISC, we do this by pooling public and private dollars and pairing technical assistance and capital grants and loans in an effort to meet childcare educators where they are and with the right suite of resources to support their business stabilization and growth. Next slide, please. At LISC, we have 35 local offices and a rural network spanning 2,400 counties across the United States. We work across several program pillars, identifying opportunity to deliver resources that build from collaboration across our areas of strength. With that, I'd like to introduce my colleague, John Moon, who's our SVP of LISC Sustainability, who lives and breathes today's topic. And I think Regina is gonna, yep, thank you. And John's gonna share a slide. Thanks, John.
All right. Well, it's good to be here with you all today, and thanks for having me. I just wanted to share a little bit of some framing remarks as it relates to the work you all are doing in this subject relative to the broader world of work within the disaster and resiliency space. So let me just say at the outset that, I don't need to cite these, but it helps to just orient. We know that the increase in frequency and magnitude of natural extreme weather disasters is happening at a faster clip. Um, Economic losses associated with disasters in 2024 was almost $400 billion. And when you think about low-income households and communities who don't have the ability to absorb these economic shocks, things like lost jobs, displacement from their homes, whether it's temporary or permanent, property loss, revenue loss for small business, additional healthcare costs associated with a disaster, longer-term chronic issues like rising insurance. These impacts are all starting to manifest to economically vulnerable households and communities that are not in a position to fully manage these shocks. And so for LISC, we know that this is a critically aligned area where we want to integrate a focus on climate and sustainability relative to all of the work with the goal of reducing financial harm and impacts to the communities that we serve. And we're doing that in two ways. The first is providing financing for sustainability related activities. Most of it is in the form of working like in affordable housing or in community facilities, including childcare, where we can address affordability issues from higher efficiency equipment, solar, those kinds of activities, and those require specialized financing. The other area of work, which is germane to our conversation today, is our disaster and resiliency work. In a nutshell, what we're doing in this space is simply providing funding and financing that reduces economic loss. And so thinking about preventative measures is one piece of that, and wanted to orient you all in just a helpful diagram. I hope you can see it. So what this diagram shows is here's the continuum of disaster. Disaster is right here in the first third, and there's a lot of important activities that can be undertaken to minimize those disasters. And the toolkit and the resource that we're going to be talking about today is one of them. But in the event a disaster hits, there's the response and relief period where resources are being deployed. There's a real need for a lot of coordination, which I'll talk a little bit more about. And then we move toward the short term and the longer term recovery phases of the impacts for communities. And those generally, in the most ideal way, allow for buildings, for example, or infrastructure to be rebuilt so that there's more of a cushion and more consideration for preventative measures. Um, so let me say that, obviously daycare, I don't need to tell you this, is an essential service, but it also has ripple effects relative to the recovery process because, if folks, essential workers and emergency responders don't have the ability to have sufficient childcare needs, that limits their ability to respond to disasters. So it is an important piece of the ecosystem of organizations that are part of the response and recovery process. I know for the toolkit itself, it's responding to mostly work at the building level that, here's all the things that you can do to make not only the building, but your business more resilient to the impacts of the disaster. I just want to call your attention to the other aspect of response, which is community level response. We're LISC is doing work in this area where the idea of social infrastructure is emerging as an important concept because when a disaster hits, it doesn't just hit a building, it hits an entire community. And the ability to mount and coordinate and collaborate among a range of key entities is really important. So, we are focusing in particularly around small businesses, housing needs. And I would throw into that essential services and childcare needs as part of that mix. What's unique about the need, so I think we're going to talk a little bit about resiliency hubs. Again, that's at the building level, but I want to also offer the idea of a virtual hub to coordinate and collaborate and to coordinate responses. And so, given the role of the daycare centers and their ability to reach other related parties, including local government, that resiliency does require connectedness with a range of organizations in order to mount a response, especially in the early days of a disaster. Local government, philanthropic funders. All need information, for example, in order to know where to best deploy those resources. So, just want to offer that as part of the larger context of your conversation today and just appreciate yeah me being able to share some thoughts here.
Thank you so much, John. Really appreciate your that context and your perspective on that. Appreciate you joining us. Hi everyone, I'm Megan Ressler. I am part of the childcare and early learning team here at LISC. Thank you again for being here today. As we launch this provider preparedness toolkit, we just wanted to start out before diving in by recognizing that we know tools like this are really most powerful when they are paired with those trusted relationships with technical assistance providers and intermediaries like you all who really understand the local landscape, have those local connections, and likely have connections already with your provider community or small business community and all of the systems that they are working to navigate. So to bring this to life, we're really excited to spotlight one example from Houston, where one of our partners, a local intermediary based in Houston, intentionally embedded these emergency readiness and preparedness concepts into a broader suite of small business supports. Focused in on home-based childcare providers and smaller scale centers. Over the past couple of years, that effort was based on pairing small capital grants with some administrative supports like procurement, vendor coordination, along with expert financial coaching, technical assistance, and connection to a local network and their peers amongst that cohort. And that was in recognition that many providers, like especially those that are solo entrepreneurs, as many of our home-based providers are, as John mentioned, resilience, it isn't just about that physical infrastructure and equipment, but also, those systems, the support and trusted partners to help navigate all of that complexity and really, put these guides and resource tools into action. So today you're going to hear a little bit about how emergency preparedness was operationalized as part of a larger TA ecosystem, what worked, what evolved, and what lessons might be replicable in your own communities. Please join me in welcoming Sean Harmon, who is going to walk us through what that looked like in practice for him and his team at Collaborative for Children. Sean?
Thank you, Megan. Hello, everyone. My name's Sean Harmon, and I work with Collaborative for Children. And I want to take a few minutes to ground this conversation in a real example from Houston, because it helps make the role of, excuse me, in intermediaries and technical assistant providers much more concrete. This work came out of a partnership between LISC Houston, the National Child Care and Early Learning Team, and Collaborative for Children through the Elevating Entrepreneurs in Childcare initiative. So this initiative supports home-based childcare providers as small business owners by combining flexible funding with hands-on support and delivery. And this is done here locally. So in Houston, this approach is essentially important. We sit at the tail end of Hurricane Alley, and providers here, they're regularly impacted by hurricanes, flooding, extreme heat, and severe storms. So over time, that's meant repeated power outages, damages to their homes, and extended program closures. So for home-based providers, excuse me, those disruptions go beyond daily operations. When a home is impacted, the business is impacted immediately. Income stops, families lose access to care, which can also affect their ability to work and earn a paycheck. And in my experience working with home-based providers, even one major storm or outage can set them back several months. And because of that reality, emergency preparedness was intentionally built into the work from the beginning. So over a 2-year period, Collaborative for Children worked with 2 cohorts. Okay. And that was 30 small childcare businesses serving roughly 300 children a day. The providers, they didn't just receive funding, they received hands-on support. Okay. We helped with procurement, vendor coordination, access to digital tools, trainings, financial practices. Every emergency preparedness was treated as part of stabilizing the business, not as a separate or one-time activity. Next slide, please. So what did this look like in real life? Well, by the second year of the program, the focus became much more about strengthening providers' ability to withstand emergencies. Okay, that meant investing in things like generators, emergency supplies, and focused infrastructure improvements. And these were practical upgrades that allowed providers to continue operating safely during power outages and severe weather. And these decisions, they were driven by what providers were experiencing firsthand and what they needed to remain open and support families during disruptions. So the goal wasn't major renovation, it was making targeted investments that could quickly strengthen a provider's preparedness and emergency responses. Next slide, please. I love these pictures. Those investments, they started to make a real difference. Providers were better equipped and able to continue serving families during power outages instead of shutting down, which reduced disruptions for parents who relied on consistent care. Facilities and safety improvements also helped. Many providers moved closer to licensing requirements and Texas Rising Star quality standards. That progress opened the door to additional funding opportunities and stronger long-term stability. The parents also noticed these changes. Providers were sharing stories that families felt more confident in their program and better prepared for emergencies, which helped keep enrollment steady and supported the growth. And emergency preparedness didn't just help providers get through a crisis. It strengthened everyday operations and made their businesses more stable overall. Next slide, please. In Houston, Collaborative for Children played an important role in helping providers navigate this process. We supported providers in coordinating vendors, understanding safety and licensing requirements, and reducing administrative burden as part of their ongoing technical assistance and capacity building work. This is where intermediaries and TA providers really add value. Providers often don't have the time or the capacity or expertise to really navigate these systems on their own. Having a trusted organization to help translate requirements and connect the dots makes these investments possible. And as we walk through the toolkit, we want to highlight where intermediaries and technical assistant providers can play the same kind of bridging role in their own communities. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Megan and walk us through the toolkit.
Thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate you sharing your work in Houston. And I know you have to jump off. We appreciate you. And if folks have questions for Sean, continue sending them through and we'll connect and circle back with you all.
Thank you.
With that, I am going to hand it over to Maggie O'Neill. As Bevan mentioned at the top, she really created a bulk of this toolkit and guidance. So we're excited for her to come join us and give an overview and some background and take us through a few of the elements of this toolkit for you all.
Thank you so much, Megan. Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm based in Hoboken, New Jersey, where, like many of us here today, we recently experienced some extreme winter weather. Severe weather events like winter storms, floods, hurricanes, wildfires, and extreme heat are increasing nationwide. And for home-based childcare providers, damage to their home can also mean loss of income, disruption to families, and challenges reopening their programs. Homegrown and LISC created the Provider Preparedness Tool to help providers plan for both immediate preparedness steps and longer-term investments to protect themselves, their families, their businesses, and the children they care for. The tool aims to help providers prepare ahead of emergencies, reduce risk, and recover faster when disasters occur. The tool was purposefully structured for home-based childcare providers, caregivers, small-scale center operators, orientating around funding gaps. It is our sincere hope that the technical assistance organizations and intermediaries gathered here today will use this tool as an activation resource, a tool to educate and motivate funders, policymakers, property owners leasing their space to providers, and community partners committed to supporting provider resilience. Next slide, please. Childcare providers understand better than most the importance of preparedness. Much like small children, the weather can be unpredictable and fast-moving, and caregivers must be prepared to respond to an assortment of scenarios. According to the American Red Cross, regardless of where they live, all providers should be prepared for the following types of extreme weather and natural disasters: extreme heat, which kills more people than any other weather event; flooding; fire emergencies, including home fires, which are actually the most common type of home emergency; and wildfires; thunderstorms, hurricanes, winter storms; and power outages. As severe weather events and natural disasters increase, so does the stress on our electrical grids, meaning providers should be prepared for the inconvenient likelihood of operating without electricity. Next slide, please. First and foremost, it is crucial that providers are prepared programmatically and financially. This section of the tool provides guidance on communications, asset protection, critical records retention, and funding sources. An important fact we learned from our partners at Homegrown is not all state-regulated emergency preparedness plans include home-based childcare providers. And those that do are oftentimes a carbon copy of emergency plan for center-based care. At minimum, state-regulated plans should authentically reflect the distinctive settings home-based childcare programs operate within. Like state licensing regulations, most insurance policies are filled with complicated technical language that is difficult to understand, creating barriers to accessibility. Moreover, many providers with policies don't know they don't have adequate coverage. Flood insurance, for example, is not typically included in regular home owners insurance policies, and those policies may not include coverage for both the contents inside a home and the structure itself. Next slide, please. The next section of the tool focuses on infrastructure preparedness, or renovations, improvements, upgrades, and maintenance activities that can minimize damage and streamline recovery. Here, the tool addresses the preparedness professionals who can tailor solutions that fit the unique needs of providers and their program's physical spaces. Next slide, please. For providers who aren't sure where to start, the tool pairs preparedness solutions with specific preparedness professionals, like state licensed professionals or qualified experts based on their areas of expertise. For example, a provider interested in safeguarding a home's thermal comfort, lighting, plumbing, indoor air quality, or fire protection systems is advised to consult a state licensed MEP/FP, or mechanical, electrical, plumbing/fire protection engineer. Whereas structural engineers should be consulted for projects related to a home's foundation, exterior walls, and roof systems. It's like I tell my husband, a YouTube tutorial does not make an electrical engineer. Next slide, please. The next step is fraud protection, verifying identities, checking licensing or registration status, and obtaining references from recent clients. Alas, not all state licensed professional search systems are created equally. Some databases are not maintained regularly, others are not user-friendly, and many don't have language translation options, triggering further barriers to accessibility. Luckily, technical assistance organizations and intermediaries don't need to be experts. They just need to know where to find the experts. Next slide, please. Licensing requirements for qualified experts vary significantly by location. Some states have specific general contractor licensing boards, and others only require local business permits. By utilizing existing or establishing new, dependable search engines, you can help providers verify the credentials of these preparedness professionals who are armed with the unique knowledge and skill sets required to meet the program needs of home-based childcare providers. Next slide, please. From knowledge gaps to inaccessible systems, the opportunities for technical assistance organizations and intermediaries to support providers are boundless and not necessarily costly. While administering the Child Care Facilities and Renovation Fund, our colleagues at LISC Connecticut allied with the Connecticut Construction Industries Association, or CCIA. The CCIA connected grantees with trustworthy, experienced, and qualified contractors that guided providers and managed projects from conception to completion. Likewise, LISC Arkansas team recently linked up with Communities Unlimited. Committed to creating self-reliance and resilience in rural America, Communities Unlimited is connecting grantees in Southwest Arkansas with qualified contractors, sharing program goals, and assisting with next steps. A comprehensive understanding of systems, processes, procedures, and key players at the state and local level is critical to maintaining childcare ecosystems. By helping providers navigate convoluted and often exclusionary systems and connecting them with the right resources, technical assistance organizations and intermediaries are not only supporting childcare operations, they are creating opportunities for new growth. Next slide, please. The infrastructure preparedness portion of the tool is organized into two categories: structural and envelope preparedness solutions and non-structural preparedness solutions. The structural and envelope preparedness solutions pertain to a building structure, or the physical framework and foundation that supports a building's weight and stability, and a building's envelope that protects occupants from outside elements, like severe weather and other conditions that can make a building unsafe or unhealthy. The non-structural preparedness solutions are categorized by building systems, indoor spaces, and outdoor spaces. It's important to note that all of the preparedness solutions proposed in this tool are designed to support, improve, and expand high-quality childcare environments that are eco-friendly, resilient, safe, and healthy. Next slide, please. Homegrown and LISC created the provider preparedness tool with the understanding that providing high-quality childcare is expensive, and providers across the country struggle every day to balance quality standards with financial feasibility. To give providers a range of options, the preparedness tool solutions are also organized by scope and cost. Best practices are among the most effective and expensive. Renovations include new installation, replacement, and/or repairs, with costs ranging from high to moderate. Furniture, fixtures, and equipment, or FF&E, and materials include enhancements or upgrades with costs ranging from moderate to low. And maintenance activities are ongoing. Many can be performed by trained staff with minimal costs. Next slide, please. Building systems are the systems and components within a home or center that provide access to the essential services buildings need to be functional and comfortable, like mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection systems. Optimized building systems include equipment and distribution systems that improve the health and safety of indoor environments. They also increase a building's overall energy efficiency, leading to immediate and long-term cost savings. The building systems infrastructure preparedness solutions presented in this tool are ordered by universal solutions or solutions all providers should consider regardless of their location, and specific solutions based on a provider's regional risks. Let's say a provider is in a region that's vulnerable to the threat of wildfire emergencies. The universal building system solutions presented in the tool include cost-effective maintenance activities that can be executed immediately and regularly, like inspecting dryer traps, vent pipes, and exhaust fans for blockages, or testing fire protection systems, devices, and equipment. The next tier of universal solutions involve purchasing and installing portable air cleaning devices. This improvement strategy is accompanied by a wildfire-specific solution, which is equipping these portable air cleaning devices with high-efficiency particle air filters, or HEPA filters. These small, cost-effective improvements can have major impact on comfort and safety. Larger scale universal solutions involve engaging a preparedness professional to inspect, repair, replace, or upgrade a building's fire safety and protection systems, or critical utilities equipment, ensuring they meet code and load-bearing requirements. These strategies are also accompanied by a wildfire-specific solution, investing in a residential sprinkler or smoke alarm system. In summary, the provider preparedness tool is intended to assist childcare providers as they identify the preparedness measures that fit their regional risks and financial resources. Next slide, please. The provider preparedness tool accounts for differing circumstances among providers who are property owners and providers who rent or lease their caregiving spaces. The preparedness solutions are also supplemented by an array of, but not exhausted list, of relevant resources, including LISC and homegrown internal resources, external emergency preparedness resources, and financial assistance resources. Navigating public funding systems is not easy, and many federal programs are only activated after a presidential disaster is declared. Thus, the tool also points to active and inactive state and city facilitated childcare-specific improvement or infrastructure grant programs as references for future funding models, like Phoenix, Arizona's active owner-occupied housing rehabilitation program, designed to address health and safety hazards, including electrical, plumbing, HVAC systems, and structural repairs. Through this and other programs, Phoenix's Neighborhood Services Department aims to make homes more energy efficient, to facilitate lead-safe, healthy homes, and address property violations. Whether they're building a basic emergency plan, improving indoor air quality, upgrading infrastructure, or planning long-term investments, the Provider Preparedness Tool helps providers take meaningful steps towards safer, more resilient childcare environments. Thank you so much for your time and attention, but stay tuned because the best is yet to come. Bevan, Nicole, and Natalie are now going to discuss some of the tool's strategic recommendations.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Similar to the last one, you pack in a lot of information in a short period of time. You're a star. Thank you. I also dropped the link to the toolkit in the chat, so hopefully folks can take a look and review that at their leisure as well. So in terms of strategic recommendations, I just wanted to start us out by first and foremost, a call to action. We really need to treat childcare as the critical support and frontline consideration that it really is, which means that childcare needs to be integrated and prioritized in local climate action planning efforts. So when we understand and catalog the needs of these providers in crisis, much like Natalie, Emily, and the folks at Homegrown have been doing over the last year, we can document that work, and we can really use that to anchor some of these response efforts. We need provider voice incorporated into the response and planning activities. These educators who are serving as community anchors and connection points across children and families are critical to response and resiliency efforts. And then we need to consider sort of the impact that the physical infrastructure has when we're serving young children in a space. So much like Maggie went through, sort of like the air filtration requirements and things that we need to think of when we have some of these emergencies and disasters occurring. With that, I just wanted to really underscore this need to center the provider experience and ensure that that this is really being incorporated in local emergency management systems, and that helps us afford access and communication and resources in planning and recovery efforts for these provider communities. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole to talk a little bit about eligibility and expansion of some funding sources.
Thanks, Bevan. So one recommendation is for policymakers to look for opportunities to expand and incentivize the use of eligible funding sources for disaster preparedness. This could mean, for example, supporting and incentivizing eligibility and application of Child Care and Development Fund quality dollars and other resources for emergency preparedness measures. And those measures would be recognized for child care providers, including home-based providers. This can also mean ensuring that child care, and specifically home-based child care, is included in community economic development planning and resource allocation, because quite often these funding streams support the major types of activities aligned with preparing for disasters. Bevan, I'll kick it back over to you for the next one.
And so the other component is we have a lot of facility funds that are operated either publicly or through financial intermediaries like CDFIs or other technical assistance organizations. This is true throughout, but we really need to ensure the inclusion of home-based childcare within the context of those facility funds and resources, with a special sort of care and attention to those that are renting spaces. So we know that's challenging for folks to make improvements to spaces that they don't own. But I think when it comes to critical infrastructure and response, this is a space where I think folks can show up and understand and recognize the importance that this has. So that's another piece that can really play a critical role as we think about ensuring both ongoing deferred maintenance needs are being taken care of, but also that there's preparedness improvements. Colorado's Family Child Care Home Facilities Improvement Grant is a worthy model to note. And I think we even have that listed as a resource in the back of the tool. All right, back to Nicole.
Another recommendation is to establish new preparedness funding sources and incentives. Specifically, these recommendations can include creating grant programs that are dedicated to supporting routine maintenance and repairs, as has been kind of referenced as being critical throughout this presentation. And so these programs would be associated with preparedness and also have really clear eligibility criteria and very simple and streamlined application processes. Policymakers should be sure that the funds are constructed for quick access and ensure continuous operations of childcare services. For example, there is currently new federal housing legislation being proposed in the Senate and in the House, and there's a home repair program that is included as a part of that package. That is the type of new program creation that could be leveraged by childcare providers that are home-based in order to make repairs and modifications to their properties that better align with being prepared for disasters. Another component is layering in additional financial incentives for property maintenance to help ensure long-term sustainability. And this policies push specifically around new programs becomes also important in the context of disaster recovery. I know that we're heavily focused on preparedness, but the more that we can push to have disaster preparedness integrated with childcare policies and programs, there's arguably an increased likelihood that childcare will no longer be an afterthought when supplemental funds are released after major disasters. For example, you know that there are FEMA resources and childcare development disaster relief funds, but quite oftentimes childcare isn't specifically thought of as one of the first in sectors or entities that need eligible resources. And I think that incentivizing preparedness through new grant programs and systems on the prepared side versus the after disaster side actually might improve resource allocation after a disaster. Devin, I'll kick it back to
Yeah,
you.
thanks, Nicole. And we're going to save the most intriguing aspect for Natalie, who's going to talk about benefit protections.
Great. Thank you, Bevan and the team at LISC. It was really wonderful to partner with you in the creation of this resource. As we've discussed, this resource is really about getting ready for and being as prepared as possible for a disaster. But there are really important protections in the federal law and the current administration of disasters that are really important for us to preserve to ensure that in the aftermath of an emergency, resources can reach providers and families and not cause additional harm. So next slide, please. As I think was mentioned so far, Homegrown has been doing disaster relief work in the hurricane-affected areas of North Carolina and Florida, in storm-affected parts of Arkansas, and then we've had a very significant disaster response in Los Angeles in response to the wildfires there. And in part, we support the delivery of direct cash resources to both licensed and legally operating but licensed exempt home-based providers so that they can use that cash to purchase whatever they need as they are recovering from a disaster. A really critical aspect of the federal law that we rely on in order to do that and to cause no additional harm is the IRS Charitable Disaster Code, and then the Stafford Act. And these two rules allow that when disaster relief is provided to an impacted individual, household, or business, that the relief that they receive is not counted for tax purposes, so there's no taxable event for them, and it is not assessed as an asset when they go to renew or maintain a public benefit. So ensuring that the receipt of these disaster aid do not have additional harms like creating a tax liability or undermining or creating jeopardy to accessing public benefits. Those are really important safeguards for recipients of disaster aid, and they rely entirely on presidential declarations of disasters. And so I want to call everybody's attention to the fact that, there has been an active discussion in Washington, D.C. about changing the thresholds at what point those disaster declarations are called. And our very strong recommendation, and I think to Nicole's point, like the opportunity for early childhood folks to do advocacy and policy work around disaster is to ensure that we can maintain these declaration thresholds, because without them, the ability to deliver aid and get resources to folks gets much trickier in the aftermath of these events. And so, in addition to really needing more of these resources on the front end, we also need to maintain some of the infrastructure and policy context that means that we can get resources effectively to folks on the aftermath of these events. Next slide, please. There is some discussion of this in the resource. So if you want to go further, we've got some links in the document and you can learn a little more. I also wanted to share that Homegrown has been doing a lot of work on benefits access in the aftermath of a disaster, and we have a forthcoming resource that will hopefully be ready in the next 4 to 6 weeks that really looks at the additional benefits available to communities in the aftermath of a disaster. So, for example, there's a disaster SNAP program where there are additional food resources for communities. There's disaster WIC. There are additional resources within FEMA if a governor requests them around lactation support and childcare support. And we really want to make sure that communities are aware of those resources and that they're organizing to take advantage of them. And that can also be a part of your preparedness to get ready to do that. So I'm hoping we can drop these links in the chat, but we have some evaluation data from our hurricane work in North Carolina and Florida. We invite you to read and to get in touch with Homegrown via our newsletter. And with that, I will pass it back to you, Bevan.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And I think, we're close to wrapping it up, but welcome any questions that folks have. I know we've been responding to a few live. Just want to also highlight LISC's resource library, which has some facility fund checklists and a whole host of other information around organizational sustainability and business coaching, and then a lot on facility design and things like that. With that, I think Megan was also going to launch a quick poll. This is not, this is our first sort of big splash into this segment of the work. And, given LISC's sustainability and our purview there, we're really interested in continuing to support elements around this. So this is just, if you can take a moment to respond to the poll, this information helps us and folks like Homegrown figure out what resources and other elements might be useful to you in your everyday work. We're really considering and thinking about how we can strengthen communities and, again, sort of work on those policy and advocacy fronts and ensure that childcare is seen as the critical resource and frontline resource that it really is. I'm also going to just take a quick look in the Q&A and see if there's anything live there. As a follow-up, we will also circulate all the links that were mentioned, in addition to the resource and the recording. Oh, Donna's raised her hand. Megan, can we take her off mute?
I think so, yes. Oh, it disappeared.
Oh, maybe that was not purposeful. Okay.
Donna, if you do, just raise your hand again, and I think I can unmute you.
In the last minute or two, I'd invite any panelists that have anything else they wanted to offer up to the attendees here. Otherwise, we are happy to end early as well.
Yes, and we've heard from about half of you. I'll share these results in a minute, but just gonna let a few more folks answer, but it is looking like a lot of people would be interested in a deeper dive session into the toolkit and strategies for TA providers. So maybe some sessions to really take a closer look at some of those resources and that guidance that Maggie went over today. And then I think our next one so far is some seed funding for small grants or capital to make help providers make those preparedness upgrades. Yeah, I think we've got about 2/3, so I'm going to end it. I'm going to share it so that you guys can all see that. But like Bevan mentioned, we'll kind of share a lot of this information, all of this information with you all afterwards. But hopefully you can see the results of that.
Oh, I'm seeing a question come in. Will the current immigration situation, which is creating fear and instability for many Latina providers, be recognized as an emergency, considering that it is directly affecting their ability to keep their businesses open and support their families? Yay, Natalie. Okay.
Yeah. I'm happy to take that question and just say that Homegrown has done some responsive direct cash work around immigration emergencies, both in kind of individual cases and in a more systematic case in the state of Minnesota. Um, Obviously, that will rely on private funders to do that, but I think a lot of the infrastructure of how we deliver cash aid after emergencies can be leveraged to do that. So, for example, Homegrown uses a third-party payment platform. We can deliver cash directly to folks in various forms, like on gift cards or direct deposit and things like that, so that it can reach them in the way that is most supportive. As I mentioned, we do a lot of work on how we structure those dollars to folks so that they can be, non-taxed and not impact benefits. I will also just say, in our emergency response work in Los Angeles, we saw the impact of ICE enforcement and immigration enforcement discouraging folks from participating in emergency response. We saw federal agents at FEMA trailers strongly discouraging participation. So, I think there's both this opportunity for private funders to deliver cash in response to what is an emergency in communities around the impacts of enforcement. But I think we all need to be thinking about how the interaction between immigration policy, childcare policy, and disaster policy sort of show up in communities and may discourage folks from being involved when they really need those resources.
Thank you so much, Natalie. And Leah's also asking if there's someone she can contact. She knows several providers who urgently need help and guidance.
I don't think I can put my email in the chat, but maybe Megan can put my email in the
We can do
chat
that. Yep.
or an info at homegrown email, and we'll be happy to be in touch.
All right. I'm dropping that in right now. Okay. Well, I think that's all we had. I want to thank our panelists again for joining. I want to thank all of you for coming and hearing lots of information in a very short period of time. We will send out the recording and some of the resources that were dropped in the chat later this week. And thank you again for your work in community and all you do to support our provider networks. Take care.